The Denver Broncos wrapped up their joint training camp practices yesterday with the Los Angeles Rams. What happened on the day? Plus, a key wide receiver is going to miss some time here for the Broncos, and we'll also give our players to keep an eye on in Saturday's preseason finale. You can expect all that and a morning cup of coffee on this morning's brand new GMB. What's up, Broncos country? Happy Friday. Welcome into another GMB as we break down the latest that's going on with the Denver Broncos. I'm Cody Roark, Broncos reporter from Mile High Sports. Do us a favor, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe down below so you never miss out on what's going on with Colorado sports, every team, every day, including GMB, Monday through Fridays, 9 o'clock a.m. Mountain Time. You get that here with me as we recap and discuss all things Denver Broncos. A special shout out to our friends over there at Superbook Sports. Thank you so much for bringing us all the action on today's episode of GMB. But we got a lot to dive into here, Broncos country. Saturday is the preseason finale here for the Broncos as they host the Los Angeles Rams, realistically in their first home game of the preseason, but final game of the NFL preseason. And all the new stadium renovations are expected to be unveiled, including the $100 million invested in a brand new Jumbotron, new signs and fixtures, and things that you'll notice all around Empower Field at Mile High. You'll get a chance to see that on Saturday. Kickoff slated for 7 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time on NFL Network or locally on 9 News. So, hey, turn your dials there. Plus, you get all the recap on Monday's episode of GMB. But let's go through and talk about what we saw at day 2 of Broncos joint practices with the LA Rams. A little bit of an interesting note. It was great to see Broncos defensive lineman, nose tackle Mike Purcell in his first day in helmets, shoulder pads. Didn't participate in team, but did some individual drills here for the Broncos as they ramp him up and get him along to where he needs to be ahead of the regular season. He's going to be a big part of what they rely on in terms of that run defense, and he's going to be a stout guy in the middle of the Broncos defensive line. They're going to need him. It was great to see him back. Damari Mathis was one player that did not dress that we saw yesterday out there. Not sure why. We didn't get much of an insight on that from Sean Payton. We didn't know what it was about, whether he's dealing with an injury. There was some speculation, I think, amongst other media members because he got into the scuffle yesterday. I doubt that is the reason why he was not at practice, but he was there, but was not physically participating. So I have to clarify that. So more reps for Jaquan McMillan and Patrick Surtain getting in the mix there here at the cornerback spot. But overall, let's talk about maybe the Broncos offense and the biggest storyline of the day of yesterday's practice, and that is wide receiver Jerry Jeudy. He was having a terrific start to the day, a hot start, a day after he had a couple of drops during the first joint training camp practice, and that became a big-time narrative about him, and all of a sudden he comes out day 2, he's catching everything in front of him, has one play. At the end of the play, he pulls up. He's grabbing his hamstring, and you could just tell that, hey, he pulled it, and it was a pretty significant pull based on how much pain and discomfort he looked like he was in. He tried walking down because, there was the berm there in Dove Valley. Took a couple of steps. Trainers had to help walk him over until the cart could come over. He was carted off. And NFL Network's Ian Rappaport later reported that it's a moderate hamstring pull here for Jerry Jeudy, and that he's expected to miss several weeks. Well, if you count down on the calendar, you see that several weeks from now, the Broncos are going to be playing a game. They'll play the Saturday. Obviously, there's next week. And then the week after that, hey, NFL season is here. It'll be game week, and Denver's beginning their prep for the Las Vegas Raiders. And his status for that game right now is highly questionable. And look, with hamstring injuries, you have to be smart. You can't overdo it because you can go through a process where, after a week and a half, 2 weeks, you feel like you're in a good spot. You're moving around, doing certain things. But then when it comes to, for Jerry, his position and what it requires him to throttle down and to break down, to come back and drive hard for the ball on certain routes, or to be able to try to get behind defenders, those explosive movements usually lead to that hamstring pulling again. And so you have to be very careful with your recovery. You need a lot of rest. You need a lot of stretching. And he's going to have access to a lot of resources during this time in which he's expected to not be active here. Denver has to be smart with this, in my opinion. And look, obviously, if he's ready to go for week 1, that's great. But if he comes back too soon, this could be an injury that does, for example, he feels good for 2 weeks, pulls it in, let's say, week 1. That could lead to him being out another 6 weeks potentially. So you have to do some risk evaluation here. And now I think it really forces the Broncos' hand. Look, You look at this receiver position, it has been snake bitten here early on so far in training camp. You lose Tim Patrick, you lose Jalen Virgil, who is competing, was probably going to make the active roster here once again. Brandon Johnson's coming back from an ankle injury. You lose KJ Hamler because he has the heart condition and he's got to take medication from in order to come back and to be able to play again. Who knows where that's at right now? He could be an option to return at some point. But then now you lose Jerry Jeudy, who is arguably your best playmaker in terms of what he's able to do in terms of dynamic versatility. You can line him up anywhere. You can use him as a weapon in certain formations. And now you lose that as a possibility here for week one. It forces guys like Marvin Mims, a second-round rookie draft pick. It forces Kendall Hinton, forces guys like Brandon Johnson to have to step up. For me, I thoroughly throughout this offseason and preseason, I've been disappointed that we haven't seen as much from Marquez Callaway as I was hoping to see from him, considering what he was able to do in Sean Payton's offense. And for some reason, not really getting targeted much in the preseason. Last week against the 49ers, he only had one target, 0 catches. We haven't seen him make plays. In practice, look, Russ had an opportunity in joint training camp practice, threw him a nice ball. He could have rose up and got it and tried to haul it in one-handed. Unfortunately, dropped it. It's just he's not making plays, and it's hard for me right now to look at the tape when we talk about evaluation. Say, okay, Marquez Callaway's been making progress here. We haven't seen too much, but I will say we have seen a little bit more out of Lil Jordan Humphrey. We saw some action in the preseason game last week against the San Francisco 49ers. He's playing a lot of special teams. He's catching passes during practice with the twos. He's getting some run with the ones after Jerry Jeudy's injury. You need him to continue to step up because Denver's going to need a contribution from everybody. It can't just be from Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton's going to see a lot of attention if Jerry Jeudy's not able to play. So Marvin Mims, Brandon Johnson, Kendall Hinton, heck, even spreading it down to your running backs in the passing game, getting them involved. Your tight ends, Adam Troutman, Greg Dulcich. Will Albert Okwuegbunam be on the active roster? I mean, so many questions right now that we have after Jerry Jeudy's injury. Denver's got to be smart with it, and we'll see how things go here in about a week or so as they start gearing up toward the regular season. After Saturday's preseason game, the process for roster cuts will officially begin to happen as they go from 90 players to 53. Then they will field their 16-player practice squad. I think they'll bring back a good portion of guys that have been on their roster, but do not be shocked or surprised if Sean Payton and the Broncos go out and they get a variety of new players that have been on other teams throughout the NFL preseason and training camp to come in and compete. That's always a possibility here when we're talking about it. I'm very curious to see how the roster formulates here for the Broncos going forward. But big loss of Jerry Jeudy. Other guys are going to have to step up. And look, this is another opportunity, for guys who are trying to make a name for themselves to go out and they do it here in the preseason. Go make a play against another team and see what you can do. But it's unfortunate here. And so for the offense, they had to continue on during that period. Now, while Jerry went out, I mean, it was almost like a real game situation. Like you can't just stop play. The injury happens. You got to send your next man in. And look, Marvin Mims, I felt like had a pretty solid day. I think he's had a solid week here against the Rams. He's had 2 plays in particular where, let's just say, he was running down the sideline untouched on a couple of plays. And so you like to see that from him. I thought he had a tremendous catch during Thursday's practice, working back against the corner, catching it, tiptoeing really against the sideline, keeping that balance. DB slipped, and he was able to run all the way downfield for what would have been a touchdown in a real game situation. So there are things that he's doing that I'm liking what I'm seeing. But I think we always have to keep in mind he's a rookie, right? So let's temper our expectations. Don't put too much pressure on him. But he's a guy that can play. Let him come along at his pace. And then, hey, if he exceeds it and he's explosive, then we can say, hey, let's up the ante a little bit here for this guy. Aside from all that, in terms of that, Jerry Jeudy, as we talked about, was having a good day before he went down with his injury. Albert Okwuegbunam had an impressive day once again. Caught a touchdown pass during one of the move the ball periods with the second team. Caught several passes downfield. Continues to be involved as a blocker. He's building a lot of momentum right now here for Denver. But I'm not sure how the tight end position is going to shape out when you got Troutman, you got Dulcich, Chris Manhertz, who was not. We did not see him at practice on Thursday. He was another guy missing. Nate Adkins has had a terrific training camp. The undrafted rookie out of South Carolina can play that hybrid fullback tight end type of role. Michael Burton has been great at the fullback position. I truly do not know how tight end is going to play out for the Broncos. Can they maybe get away with stashing Alberto on the practice squad? Maybe. But I think Alberto, if that's the case, he'll get picked up by another team. He'll go out there and he'll have some success. Some other things there too. Adam Troutman once again getting more involved here for the Broncos offense and has become a little bit of a security blanket for Russell Wilson during some of these practices. And I think he's an evident roster lock at this point. Now, I don't expect many of the starters to play in Saturday's preseason games. Some may play, but I don't think they're the high-quality frontline guys. I don't think we're going to see Cortland Sutton now in the light of where Jerry Jeudy's at. But overall, I think joint training camp practices, they were really competitive for both sides. The Rams had some times where they got their licks in. The Broncos got their licks in from time to time. But here's what Broncos head coach Sean Payton had to say about the 2 days with the Los Angeles Rams and his overall process, and maybe how the reps that they got served well for them in their evaluation process.
Chance to get to the tape. I felt like we had a little bit more juice today, just being out on the field. We kind of talked about it last night. I was real pleased with the 2 days we got with the Rams in that, you know, before you ever start, there's certain things you hope for, and I thought both clubs did a great job of handling the drills, and I thought the teams and the players did a good job of, you know, we get better when we do this. You know, first off, we see other schemes, other thoughts, kind of stimulates, you know, your think tank a little bit, and it also, I think, it changes the routine up. You know, you're getting more. Those are a lot of team snaps. I don't know if we tallied them up. We're over 120 team snaps, and so that's huge when it comes to the evaluation process. Just more information.
Broncos just have to keep building there. And look, now the regular season is approaching. Every move that they make from the end of the preseason game to now, it is going to be a crucial juncture here for Sean Payton. As the regular season comes around, the stakes get a little bit higher. The challenges will become a little bit more difficult here for Denver. How do they respond is a great question as we continue our preview here on this morning's GMB. We're also going to dive into some players to watch and a couple of recaps and notable performances from Thursday's joint practice with the LA Rams. But Broncos country, real quick, let me tell you about our friends over there at Superbook Sports. You hear that? That's the sound of football coming back. And now is the time to place your preseason bets with Superbook Sports. Superbook is the most trusted name in Vegas. And now you can use promo code MILEHIGH to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus, whether you win or lose. They will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code MILEHIGh. Don't miss out this football season. Win some money with Superbook Sports and promo code MILEHIGh. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Who are some players that stood out during Thursday's final joint practice with the Los Angeles Rams? Well, first off, let's dive into Nick Bonito. Want to talk about a couple of plays he had here. The Broncos defense at the beginning of practice, I think they got off to a little bit of a hot start, which is great. Then they were challenged a little bit later on in the red zone period by the Rams offense and Matthew Stafford. But Nick Bonito continues to have a strong preseason, a strong training camp, pressure, great get off the line of scrimmage, times it really well, very disciplined against the edge. But he had two plays on the day on Thursday that if it were a real game situation, he would have sacked Matthew Stafford 2 times. And the one thing I was just going to say about Bonito is that he has been consistent every single day, all throughout practice, all throughout camp. He looks like an entirely different person. So it's good to see that for a young guy that, you know, when the Broncos took him late round 2 a couple of years ago, the expectation really was like, hey, is this guy going to be your pass rusher of the future? He's not expected to start this season for Denver, but Sean Payton gave us a little bit of insight earlier in the week saying, hey, you may think the competition looks like this, but it could actually be this. Right now, it looks like Jonathan Cooper, Randy Gregory are the 2 guys that will start there. You can see Frank Clark and Nick Bonito being rotational guys here. And then when Baron Browning comes back from his knee injury, he'll be a major factor into that rotation there. And it's going to be in waves that Sean Payton is going to send pressure after opposing quarterbacks. So you love to see that overall here, but for Nick Bonito, once again, tremendous day. We already talked about Albert Okwuegbun on the big day that he had, Adam Troutman and some other guys. Let's talk about Asang Bassi, who's had a tremendous preseason, 2 interceptions so far in 2 games during Thursday's practice in red zone, playing in for K'Wan Williams once again, playing inside that nickel spot. He came away with an interception, jumped a pass that Matthew Stafford had thrown for, you know, back pile of the end zone. He was able to get both feet in, interception of Asang Bassi. The very next play, they tried to go at him again. He knocked the ball down. So he continues to have a really good preseason training camp. And now, hey, you get one final game. I don't know if we're going to see much of him, but it's certainly possible. I mean, I could see a situation where You do see a little bit of Jaquan McMillan, saying Bassey maybe for a series, especially if the starters don't play. But to me, if K'Wan Williams is not going to be ready for week 1, we don't know his status yet. Bassey is that guy. He's more than proved it here so far for the Broncos last season and so far here in the offseason. I'm very curious to see the path there. Jaquan McMillan, as we've seen, like when the second team defense comes out, Jaquan will play in the nickel, and then they'll have another guy playing on the outside there. You got to see a little bit more from Art Green, Delonte Hood, some of these other quarterbacks, veteran Tremont Smith. You need to see more from these guys, and this is the game that you're going to get the opportunity to do just that. But I felt like we had to highlight him for sure. Bassey has just been tremendous for the Broncos. And then Alberto, once again, when he did catch that touchdown, he had a celebration there where he dunked it on the goalpost. Ref threw the flag. I mean, the refs were very flag happy for both sides during Thursday's practice. But for the most part, came away thoroughly impressed with, the overall operation. I think it was a competitive week here for the Broncos in this game. And so those players that I just listed there, the Asang Bassies, we'll see how much he plays, but Alberto, I think, is one player to watch. Nick Bonito. We're talking about some other guys in the secondary, perhaps. Jaquan McMillan, J.L. Skinner, Delarian Turner-Yell. These are guys that I have my eyes on quite a bit. And, hey, I think another good question is, will we see Kareem Jackson play in this game here? Because he's not necessarily a starter right now. Really, it's going to be Justin Simmons, Caden Stearns. I think Kareem's going to have to go out and continue to play here. It's very interesting. It's not, it's a little bit of a unique position, 14 years in the league. And hey, it's like, oh, do you have to play in the third and final preseason game? I don't know what the Broncos' plan is yet for him, but they want to have some clarity on their safety position as they prepare for the NFL regular season. And obviously, you want to see a little bit of a good performance out of Jarrett Stidham, Ben DiNucci, the Broncos' backup quarterbacks. Obviously, Jarrett Stidham, number 2, Ben DiNucci, number 3. They carry 3 guys. It'll be these 3 guys more than likely. And then I think maybe the cliche one, Jaleel McLaughlin. This is a guy that we love to watch. He's been so impressive. In my opinion, I'm curious to see how much he plays. If he doesn't play much, to me, it tells me he's a roster lock. And then undrafted rookie free agent offensive tackle, Alex Pelcheski, getting a lot of run with the second-team offense, number 63. How is he going to do in the third and final preseason game? I think these are things that you should probably keep an eye on here, Broncos country, against the LA Rams preseason game. We'll be back on Monday, though, for a brand new episode of GMB.